See, today's session, I think more or less, I'll talk about what we are going to do this 40 days. Because there were people who used to stop me near Tiffin Center, near Chai Center and ask, sir, what are the templates you're going to discuss, right? So let me demystify what we are going to do for next 40 days, so that for next 40 days you will be prepared and you will have more of receiving capacity, right? Every subject we'll see what are the aspects we are going to see, right? Then how are we going to approach the questions? Then what are the techniques we are going to learn? These are the three things which we are going to discuss in today's class, and if time permits, I'll introduce the polity session. Okay. Now when you look at your prelims broadly, I think I can classify it into 5 broad aspects, right? Yes. These are the major 5 broad aspects. Now one thing you need to keep in mind, that it is humanly impossible for you to cover pin to pin of each of these aspects. Yes. Here, generally what happens is you pick up Lakshmikant, you will read that 600, 700 odd pages, and once you close the book and once you start solving questions, what happens is you forget. That's one issue, right? Then when you talk about history memorizing itself becomes very, very difficult, because you will have number of names, number of years, chronology aspect, the personality aspect, right? Then if you talk about your geography, in geography more or less people should be comfortable because it is very conceptual. The only difficulty with respect to geography is your maps. So in these 40 days, what we are going to do is, we are going to identify what are the important aspects of each of this subject. Now say for polity we will have roughly 100 topics. For example, next year you are going to have presidential elections, 2023. So it is very certain you can have a question on presidential elections. Yes, this is one. Then if you talk about the international relations aspect, that also can appear as part of this. I am clubbing both of them, governance, international relations and polity into one subject. Yes, there it can be as part of your some UN conventions, or it can appear as part of your mapping, right? So like this, what we are going to do is, we are going to shortlist roughly 100 topics for each of this subject. So what happens is, in class, I am going to discuss those 100 topics. Now discuss does not mean it is not going to be a foundation course, my dear, right? Now if you talk about polity, now just see this. Now if you talk about polity sessions for next 8 to 10 days, what you will see is, one aspect which I am going to discuss is something called as catches. Catches. What do you mean by catches? Now you will see that, suppose you talk about some constitutional body, appointment will be by somebody, removal will be by somebody. Now for other constitutional body this is going to vary. For some other constitutional body the tenure is going to vary. For some other body the way of removal is going to vary. Now if you talk about defection, if you talk about disqualification, in disqualification you have 2 different aspects. One is defection, the other one is the presidential aspect. Yes, now these are nothing but your catches. Now in defection I will not discuss about all of the aspects, no. I will talk about where the UPSC is going to catch you. Now when you go and verify your previous year questions, or which we are going to discuss as part of the classroom, you will see that UPSC will majorly play on these catches. It might be with respect to the powers of governor, it might be with respect to the powers of president. Here you don't need to remember the powers of president, you just need to remember that the powers of president is situational, the powers of governor is both situational as well as constitutional. Now if you talk about your emergency clauses, then there also you have number of catches. For example, your 352, 356 and 360. and in middle you will come across 358 and 359. Most of us will get confused which is for article 19, which is for article 20 and 21. So what we are going to do in span of these sessions is, for those 100 topics, we are going to learn these catches. Trust me, in examination hall, whenever you are seeing a statement, don't read the whole statement for polity. That doesn't make any sense. The only thing you need to see is, once we see about these catches, you will directly look at what is the catch in the statement. Now, for example, there has been this concept called as bargaining plea. For some time in the news, right? Bargaining plea. Now this year they had exhausted this parole clause. They had asked a question on parole. They had asked a question on custody, judicial custody, right? Now we'll see such extrapolations. I think in the open session which I was discussing, I talked about something called as extrapolations. Now you need to remember, the importance of static every year is going to change. Now that particular change factor of static every year is in relation with current affairs. You will find lot of correlation. Randomly UPSC would not have asked some question. For example, they had asked a question on right to privacy. They had asked a question on this property also, right to property, I think. Yes, last year 2021. Now why was right to property asked? Keshavananda Bharati was one. The Ayodhya issue was the other. Right? This year there is more or less a chance on asking about Article 25 to 28, Article 44 and Article 29 and 30. Because hijab issue has been going on. This is what is meant by extrapolation. Now in such topics what we will do is, we are going to identify the catches. We will make a crux of all these catches and we will keep memorizing them, we keep revising them. Because polity, understanding wise, it is very easy. Most of you will not face any difficulty in understanding the subject. The only issue with respect to polity where it comes is remembering these catches. We will see those catches as part of the session. This is one aspect. The second aspect is PYQs become very, very important in polity. I will not talk about other subjects, right? For example, history, they keep changing. But when you talk about polity, PYQs are very, very important. Because now when you refer your PYQs in polity, we will come across 10 very important areas. One is your fundamental rights, then DPSP. This is one aspect. The second aspect is your parliament. The third aspect is federalism, vis-a-vis separation of powers, vis-a-vis doctrine of checks and balances, all this, right? In that only you can even add your judiciary. The fifth important aspect of your polity is your constitutional or statutory bodies. For example, when you refer your 2019 question paper, there was a question on PNGRB. Yes? PNGRB. Now there, one statement was, this was the first statutory body to be established in India. Now that's a very extreme statement. PNGRB was roughly established around say 2010 or 2008, somewhere around that region, post 2005. Now from 1951 till 2005, there was no statutory body. How do you think the administration is going to function? Yes, that's little bogus, right? So this aspect also becomes very, very important. Now these statutory bodies which we are going to focus is going to be only on the basis of news. For example, NCSC is going to be very important this year. NCSC, right? Here, this fifth and 6th schedule bodies are going to be very important. For example, your TAC, TAC. Because the reason why I am telling that 5th and 6th schedule are going to be very, very important this year, one reason is Arunachal Pradesh had claimed for 6th schedule status, your 125th constitutional amendment. Point number 1. Second, there is something called as Godavarman case, where people have been referring. This Godavarman case vis-a-vis Forest Conservation Act 1980 and Indian Forest Act 1927. And the third reason why I am telling your 6th and 5th schedule are going to be important this year is because your FRA is going to complete 15 years. Your Forest Rights Act 2006 is completing 15 years. It has completed, right? Your PESA is going to complete 25 years. So that means this year UPSC question paper cannot go without local bodies. Now be it whatever local bodies they want to ask. Now once we are able to know the catches of these local bodies, I think any question on local body can be answered. Don't you think so? Yes? Now for example, if you talk about anthropology question paper this year, there was a question on FRA. If you talk about Indian Forest Service forestry optional, there was a question on IFA, Indian Forest Act 1927. That means UPSC is watchful of all these incidents. Right? So for this year, my local bodies is also going to be very important. And it has been a while where UPSC asked a question on local bodies. Is this clear? Right? Now, if you are able to master these 5 aspects, now at least I think out of 18 questions, I think 10 questions can be safely answered. Because the range of polity questions are roughly between 18 to 25. If you are fortunate enough, you will get 25 because polity is the section where you can score. And remember, you cannot afford to make a mistake in polity question. As the stats say that 90% of the aspirants put polity questions with an accuracy of 90%. That means out of 25, they answered 22 to be correct. So you cannot afford to make any mistakes in this polity section because it is predictable. It is predictable, point number 1, it is easy. Once you remember or once you are able to identify what are these catches. Right? Then the new trend with respect to UPSC in polity section is concepts. Concepts. For example, last year there was a question on justice. Last year there was a question on equality, social capital. All these were asked. Now this year, I am expecting a question on liberty, fraternity, right? Now this liberty was asked in 2017. They asked about what do you understand by liberty? Is it giving complete freedom or is it providing the environment which is conducive for one's or individual development? That was one of the statements, right? Liberty in the sense, again this is related to your hijab. Hijab is all about what? Liberty, freedom of thought, expression, belief, worship and faith, right? Fraternity. Now this fraternity has been pending from past 3 years. Now this fraternity is in the relation with your communal clashes. Communal clashes. Because to counter communal clashes, one of the important aspects that has to be imbibed in any of the citizen is your fraternity, kind of brotherhood. So once we are able to understand the deeper meaning of fraternity and liberty, I think this conceptual aspect will be done. But other concepts as part of your preamble will just pass through, right? your justice, your equality, different forms of justice, right? Okay, all those, dignity, integrity, unity, all these aspects will just rush through. Okay, so your next 8 days of polity is going to be in this format. For all topics, we'll see the catches, we'll see the previous year questions, right? And we'll see the conceptual understanding. And when we are seeing PYQs, when we are seeing the PYQs or the previous year questions, the things what we are going to learn are your elimination techniques. Elimination techniques. Now, there are roughly, I think, 16 to 18 elimination techniques which generally apply for UPSC question paper. See, there are roughly 16 to 18 elimination techniques which generally you can straightforward apply to UPSC question paper, right? Now again, these elimination techniques of 16 to 18 are with a disclaimer. Because when you go back and refer to 2018 question paper, none of these elimination techniques were working. I think around 16 to 18, hardly 5 were working, right? So again, it's with a disclaimer. Now these elimination techniques are going to come handy when the paper is very, very weird. Now that weirdness or that randomness cannot happen in polity section. Although the questions are very, very random in polity, that can be limited to maximum of 5, not more than 5 out of your 25 questions, right? So as and when we are discussing your PYQs, we'll see 2 ways of solving your PYQs. The one way is through your knowledge, right? Whether my knowledge base is sufficient enough to solve that particular question. This is one way of solving. The second way of solving is using these techniques, right? Now these techniques will come handy when you are running short of time. When you are running short of time, what happens is you again need to use these elimination techniques, because if the question is very lengthy, for example, this 2021 question paper, you would have seen a question on Dharma Sutras. I think one question was there on Dharma Sutras or Dharma Shastras. Yes? Now that question was very, very lengthy. But one of the elimination techniques could have been applied in that particular question to cut short the time. So the two-way utility of your elimination techniques is: 1, when the question is out of your knowledge base; 2, when you are running short of time, right? So with your PYQs, we will see how we are going to apply each of these, right? Now this is with respect to polity. Then, now when you talk about geography, now one aspect of geography is concept. Now till 2020, it was such that the proportion of geography in your question paper was very minuscule. In 2019, here and there, they had asked some geographical concepts, but in 2020, it was complete MS. Then again, they had come back in 2021. Now that conceptual understanding will be in 3 areas, majorly in 3 areas. 1, your climatology. 2, your oceanography. 3, in your geomorphology. Now you might think, sir, you wrote whole geography syllabus and you are saying 3 topics. Now there are certain fundamentals in each of this topic. Now once you understand this fundamentals of each of these topics, for example, if you talk about climatology, the 3 forces which are going to act are your pressure gradient. There is something called as PGF, pressure gradient force, The second one is there is something called as Coriolis force. The third one is something called as frictional force. Once you are able to decipher with respect to this, and most importantly a PGF, your climatology is done. For example, your cell distribution, your Ferrel cell, your Headley cell, your Walker cell, your polar cell, all these are based on your PGF. Because once you are able to understand that A is going to move from high pressure to low pressure, that's clear. You can even talk about your cyclonic movements. You can even talk about anticyclones. You can even say what is the difference between cyclone and anticyclone. You can even say what is the difference between tropical cyclone and temperate cyclone. Once you are able to understand PGF. So don't worry, I will not talk whole about climatology, but I will give you a brief about PGF, understanding the variations with respect to PGF, and we will see how are the other concepts going to vary. Right? Then another extended concept of your climatology is the layers of atmosphere. I don't know, I am expecting some, maybe this year or next year if I am not wrong, a question on Van Allen belts and a question on paleomagnetism. These two are some of the pending concepts, and past 2-3 years these concepts have been in use. Paleomagnetism and your Van Allen belts. These Van Allen belts, they are manifested in the form of your Aurora Borealis and Aurora Australis. I think you would have heard about all this, the northern light and the southern lights. Basically they are the resultant of your Van Allen belts. Right? Now if you talk about climatology and or if you talk about oceanography, the one important thing you need to understand is how is the temperature of water going to vary. Now once you are able to understand this variation with respect to your temperature, with respect to your salinity, with respect to your density, the STD concept, your salinity, temperature and density, and once you are able to decipher the relation, your oceanic currents are very simple. You will be able to understand or you will be able to decipher which is a cold current, which is a warm current. And you just need to remember those currents which are little weird. For example, your Irminger current, your Norwegian current, these are little weird. Apart from this, all other currents you would have come across in your mainstream learning. Right? So once you are able to understand this STD, this particular concept here with respect to your oceanography is also used in your environment in the concept of something called as BOD, biological oxygen demand. And you will see your BOD is inversely proportional to temperature. Now once you are able to understand what is BOD, the extended concept is COD. Right? Okay, we will see these interlinkages also. So that what happens is when you are learning one concept, it is not that you are landing it or you are learning it in a silo. You are extending that particular concept to other subjects. Is that clear? So one aspect is concepts. The second aspect with respect to geography, what we are going to see is mapping. Now in this mapping, there are some areas which are very, very basic, which are areas of UPSC's favorite questioning. For example, your Caspian Sea, Black Sea, right? These two have been asked numerous times. For example, on Caspian Sea, there was a question on Caspian Sea in 2019 and there was a question on Caspian Sea in 2020. It's only that in 2020 they are given as part of one of the options, but in 2019 it was a standalone question. And if you are able to remember the mnemonic of Akrat or Tariq, whatever, the country surrounding your Caspian Sea, I think that is done. Or Black Sea, Goodbar. So what we are going to do with respect to this mapping is, we have some basic set of mapping for which we will be seeing only the mnemonics. We will be seeing only the mnemonics. So with mnemonics what happens is, again, you don't need to sit and memorize. These mnemonics will be very, very fancy. They will sound like some Japanese or some Korean serial, which most of you will relate and you can easily remember. Right? Now this year, RLC and the areas around here, Russia, Ukraine, are going to be very, very important. Now you need to remember one thing, that in mapping, I think UPSC has been kind enough. In the sense, now when you refer your questions of mapping, say like 2002, 2005 or 2008, what you would see is, UPSC was very specific with respect to countries. It would have picked up one European country and it would have asked some mapping with respect to that particular country. But when you look at from 2015 onwards, or say from 2013 onwards, you will see that the mapping questions have become more broad. So once you are able to remember these mnemonics, I think that most of your mapping questions will be answered. Right? The third aspect of your geography, what we are going to see, is the factual base. Now what do you mean by factual base? Here is one, with respect to resource proportion. Now these resources, it is your water, your land, forest, minerals. Now when you talk about UPSC questioning, this area is also very, very favorite of UPSC questioning. For example, in 2018 there was a question on forest, right? In 2019 there was a question on forest density. In 2020 there was a question on groundwater. Yes or no? Now when you look at this particular area, now this year forest is very, very important, because you have your ISFR 2021 being released. As part of your ISFR also, or Indian State of Forest Report 2021, which has been released, you would find that the difference between your ISFR 2021 and your ISFR 2019 is that they have included 3 additional aspects. They have talked about something called as carbon sinks. They have talked about something called as the forest resources with respect to your tiger regions, and they had also included with respect to the wetland regions of your forests. Now these are the 3 important or 3 new things which have been included in your ISFR 2021. So your ISFR is going to be extremely important this year. The mangrove proportion, the open forest proportion, the very dense forest proportion, or the with respect to your state distribution. I think this year it was a very strange observation with respect to your ISFR 2021, that in northeastern region there was a drastic reduce with respect to the forest area. Now it can so happen that if UPSC wants to make it a tough question, it can give the 4 northeastern states and ask you to arrange in the increasing order or decreasing order. Now when you refer your 2019 question where they had asked your Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, they had talked about forest density and they had asked about increasing or decreasing. Right? So we will see these aspects also. Right? Then the second is your census. Your census, if you are lucky enough, you will not have your census 2021 being released in the month of April. Right? Okay. Otherwise, we have to refer 2021 census. But if not 2021 census, 2011 census will do. And you need to remember that 2011 census is also going to be very important this year because its utility is going to be ending this year, right? So you need to have a decent factual base about your census 2011. Don't worry, we'll give you, right? This is with respect to your factual base. Now I will say in geography, PYQs will certainly have a lesser relevance, right? It's only that, now for example, this year they had asked a question on savanna. Now that particular question was repeated from 2015, right? The properties or characteristics of savanna as a biome, that is a repeated question from 2015. Now again it depends. Now the relevance of PYQs in geography is comparatively lesser vis-a-vis other subjects, right? Then another very important aspect is biomes. Biomes. Now when you go back and refer your 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2018 question papers, you will see a question on equatorial forests. Now that is a favorite question of UPSC, right? It has been asking a question consistently on equatorial forest or your equatorial region or your tropical regions. Now this biome is going to have a convergence with respect to your environment also, because you will see a latitudinal distribution of biomes. You will see as the latitude increases, your temperature is going to decrease. As the altitude increases, your temperature is also going to increase, and you find that Mount Chimborazo is going to mimic your altitude as well as latitude. We'll discuss during your geography sessions, right? Now as part of these biomes, you will see one favorite area is tribal population. Tribal population, for example, your Samangs, right? You have different African tribes being distributed across these biomes. One is that. The second one is vegetation. Vegetation aspect, right? What is going to be the characteristic of your thorny vegetation, or what is going to be the characteristic of your tropical vegetation, what is going to be the characteristic of your temperate vegetation. Now when you look at the fundamental difference of all three regions, you will see that basically your temperate regions are going to have needle-like leaves, whereas your equatorial regions are going to have drooping broad leaves, whereas your thorny regions are going to have what? Thick leaf structure, right? So that vegetational difference also we are going to see. The third aspect is the economic activity. Economic activity in that particular region. For example, if you talk about some activity called as lumbering, if you talk about something called as lumbering, it is very prominent with respect to your temperate regions. Lumbering as an activity is not conducive with respect to your tropical regions. It's not that we'll see all about lumbering, we'll just see some differences. Lumbering is nothing but a logging activity, right? Okay, or you talk about ranching. Ranching is nothing but a large scale livestock breeding. That is nothing but ranching, right? These regions of US, these regions of New Zealand, Australia, you have extensive ranching activity, right? Now these are the aspects that are going to be discussed in your geography. Now you need to observe one thing with respect to whatever topics we are covering is, it is only going to be exam specific. We are not going to read length and breadth of all these topics what we have discussed. It's only that you need to remember we are going to cover whole of your geography in 1 week. We are going to cover whole of your polity in 1 week. So here what happens is, I cannot afford to sit and give all the concepts. It's only that what is specific to the exam is going to be given vis-a-vis your current affairs. So the whole class will be spread across whatever static aspects that are related to your current affairs are going to be discussed majorly. That is one aspect. The second aspect is we generally have there is some lack of conceptual clarity with respect to some subjects. For example, if you talk about economy, you will certainly face an issue with respect to your sterilization activity of RBI, or you will certainly face an issue with respect to how is the exchange rate going to vary. Because in economy what happens is you have multiple factors playing at the same time and you will start operating everything. We will see how to demystify that particular concept in economy. The same issue of operating multiple factors comes even in your geography. Right? You will see even temperature varying. If temperature varies, the relative humidity is going to vary. If the relative humidity is going to vary, the saturation temperature is again going to vary. If the saturation temperature is going to vary, my pressure is going to vary. If the pressure is going to vary, the precipitation type is also going to vary. The kind of wind movement is also going to vary. Right? So here you have multiple factors playing. You need to remember that you are going to operate only one factor at a time. Right? We will see at what aspects we are going to do this vis-a-vis your PYQs. Right? The third topic is history. Now when you look at this particular subject, history, for most of you it is mystery, right? For most of us face difficulty in, first of all, this subject is very, very dry. Pardon me if there is any history optional person, please, right? It is very dry. It is very factual. It demands a lot of your grey space. You need to remember a lot, right? What we'll do is, we'll go for mnemonics. We'll go for mnemonics, right? For every aspect we'll have mnemonics. For example, if they ask you the chronology of the Advaita, Dvaita and Visishta Advaita, your mnemonic is SRM. Shankaracharya, Ramanuja and Madhva. Simple. So chronology, you cannot make a mistake. This is 8th century, this is 12th century, this is 14th century. Now remembering these centuries is different aspect. It's only that if I have to arrange them in the chronological order, I'll use SRM. Suddenly if they ask you what are the animals that are present on your Ashokan pillar, it is BHEL. BHEL. Right? Now what we do is we'll go for such approaches. Such approaches majorly here ancient India. Ancient India. For example, if they are asking you about arrange them in the chronology with respect to your Delhi Sultanates, their mnemonic is SKTSL. Right? Now here what am I doing? It's only that I am I am using some jugaad technique to remember certain things. Yes or no? So these mnemonics are going to be for your ancient as well as medieval. For ancient and medieval. Right? Now this is one aspect. The second aspect which you are going to see in history is terminology. Now these terminology questions are little savagery in nature. In the sense, suddenly they ask a term out of blue. Now, I think, if I am not wrong, there was one question in 2016 based on terminology, right? That was a very weird name. Okay. Now here what we do is, we have two approaches of doing it, right? Again, why am I calling these terminology questions as savagery? In the sense that there is no other way of remembering these terminologies. Now you can remember those terminologies that are given in your ancient and medieval books, but if something comes outside, one technique which we use with respect to your terminology, we go for etymological approach. Now what do you mean by etymological approach is, we break that word. We break the word whatever it is given. Now one advantage of being South Indians or being acquainted with your Dravidian languages is, you have a lot of similarity with Sanskrit. Now when you are able to have a lot of similarity with Sanskrit, when you are able to break this particular word, most of the meanings you will know. I am not able to recollect that 2016 question. That was something breaking down into a meaning of wheel. And in the options, one option was some wheel pottery was there. And I think I had marked that and come, that was a correct answer. So one way of solving your terminology questions is etymology. The second way of solving is preparing them. Right? Now in class what am I going to do is, for Buddhism and Jainism, we'll cover all the terminologies possible. Right? We'll cover all the terminologies possible for Buddhism and Jainism, because now when you refer your previous questions, the bunch of topics with respect to your history are important. One is your Buddhism and Jainism. This year IVC is extremely important. Although last year they had asked a question on Dholavira, this year again it is going to be very important. Why? Because 1921 it was excavated, it is 100 years of excavation. The first site of IVC was excavated in 1921. It's an 100 year, or it is a century year this year, or last year per se. So it is going to be important. Your IVC aspects is going to be very, very important. For example, if you go back and refer Anthropology paper 2, there was a question on theories of origin with respect to your IVC, which was expected question this year, because it is 100 years. Now why I am substantiating with respect to your 2021 question paper is that you need to remember UPSC is following a particular trend. So this year IVC is going to be important. Buddhism and Jainism any day. The Ashokan era, right? This year again, Central Asian kingdoms are going to be very important. Central Asian, here Kushans, Sakas, yes, GSPK, the chronology, Indo-Greeks, Sakas, Parthians and Kushans, GSPK. Right? This year the Central Asian kingdoms are going to be very important. Why? Why the Central Asian kingdoms are going to be very important? India has been very vocal about Central Asian policy. And after a limbo of 3 years, it's that our leaders are visiting these Central Asian countries. So this is going to be important aspect this year. Then, last year they had asked on Gupta. This year, Harsha era is going to be very important. Then, any day South Indian kingdoms are important, because there is no question paper without a South Indian kingdom. Majorly Vijayanagara, but in 2017 it was a switch. They had switched it to Kakatiya dynasty, where they had asked a question on Motupalli, right? Motupalli, the port city. And this year, again it is expected that UPSC is going to make a switch to Kakatiyas, because of World Heritage Site. Because of World Heritage Site. So your Kakatiya is anyway going to be important this year, as well as Vijayanagara, right? In extension, we will see here Chola and Pallavas. South Indian kingdoms are very, very important, right? Per se, even the Sangam period. It's been a while. I think the last question that was asked from Sangam period was in 2016. Now it's been 7 years. it can make a reappearance with respect to your question. Okay. Then in medieval, now this medieval aspect, we are going to be very choosy. One thing, because it's hard to remember. It's hard to remember. The second thing is, we never know what is going to be asked, because in previous years, at least from 2011 till 2021, when you find the proportion of medieval India is very, very less. It's only that from 2019 they started asking more on medieval India. When you look at one important area of medieval India, is their revenue administration. Revenue administration has been extremely important with respect to questioning of your medieval India. For example, your land revenue system, the taxation system, right? Your Alauddin Khilji reforms, right? Shershah Suri's. Now here what you find, the revenue administration of medieval India is going to be very, very important. For example, your Maratha also, your Shivaji, Sardeshmukhi, Chaut, all these are going to be very important. This is one aspect. The second aspect with respect to medieval India which has to be covered is your art and culture. Indo-Islamic art. Indo-Islamic art. We'll see these two majorly, we'll emphasize. Now in case if we get some time, we'll go for judicial administration as well as your political administration, right? Now I think you can even add your political administration to an extent with respect to especially the provincial administration. The provincial administration of medieval India has been very, very important again, right? I think sometimes they had asked a question directly with respect to, I think in 2021 only, they had asked a question with respect to arrange the following in the order. Yes? So this is with respect to your medieval India. Now this is with respect to your ancient and medieval. Now when you talk about your modern, now I think more or less people will be comfortable with respect to modern India, right? See Tanuja, I think agriculture topics will discuss with respect to your economy, okay? And Shatavahanas as such with respect to South Indian Kingdom, we can just see a pass through but not so important, right? Not so important. But for your state services, Shatavahanas is the most important topic, right? Now coming back to modern India. Now when you look at modern India, one thing we are going to see is institutions. Institutions, especially your pre-Congress and post-Congress. Now this region has been one very important area with respect to questioning. Institutions, right? Then the second aspect is events. Now when it comes to your freedom struggle movement or your events, what we are going to do is we are going to stick to those which are making some centenary, for example some 100 years or 125 years or 75 years or 50 years, right? Any of these marked years. For example, this year you can expect a question on INA. Can expect a question on INA. This is one. You can expect a question on SC Bose, right? You can expect a question on any day here Gandhi, because with respect to your SC Bose it is 125 years, with respect to Gandhi it is 100, right? Now the events centered around these two personalities will be focused. Now again, 75 years of independence. Now when you talk about 75 years of independence, that means the events that took place between 1940 and 1947 are going to be extremely important. When you go back and refer one of the mains questions of 2019, you will see that the British was very hard in releasing its strings with respect to freedom. It was a delayed event. Now that year UPSC was asking about the time period of 1940 to 47. Now again this year, as 75 years of independence, we are going to have a great emphasis on the events of 40 to 47. It might be in the form of chronology, it might be in the form of the kind of events that were undertaken. We'll see all those aspects, right? Then, now this year, post-independence is going to make a reappearance, if my guess is correct. Post-independence. Now this post-independence, especially emergency era. Now this emergency era is going to stand important with respect to your polity also. Because your 352, 356, 360, 359, 358, 355, all these articles are going to be very, very important in the context of emergency. This is one aspect. The second aspect, it is going to be important in the form of history, right? The kind of leadership that was seen during your emergency, the chronology of events, right? It is also going to be important with respect to your economy. Now economy, one, the culmination of Green Revolution, although it started during 1966, it started to show its impact post 1972. So a Green Revolution is going to be very, very important. In the similar context, the White Revolution or Operation Flood is going to be important this year. The reason why Operation Flood or White Revolution is going to be important is here Varghese Kuran have passed away recently. So in the context of emergency, this is going to be important, or these three regions are going to be covered, right? So this is with respect to your history. Yes, okay. Then Karan, Ramanuja statue, yes, right? The philosophy of Dvaita, Advaita, Visishta Advaita, all those are going to be important this year. Now when you talk about economy, the first aspect which we are going to see is concepts. Now in this concepts, there are some areas which are very, very dear to UPSC. One is your money aggregates. One is money aggregates, your M0, M1, M2, M3, right? And related concepts of your money aggregates is your velocity, right? Or your money multiplier, or your liquidity trap. These are extended concepts of your money aggregates. This is one important area which UPSC has been asking. The second, if they want to go for a simpler question, then they can ask about your GDP, GVA calculations. Calculations in the sense, you have your GDP, you have your GNP, right? You have your GDP at factor cost, market price, basic price. We'll see all those differences because most of us will get confused when to use your basic price, when to use your market price, when to use your factor cost. The conversions are, we'll see. And when we are seeing this GDP, GVA and this market price, this factor cost or basic price, we'll see a relation with respect to inflation. How are they related to inflation? Now there has been one concept which is buzzing in the news called as inflationary trap. There is something called as inflationary trap. See, economy is going to run on concepts. For 2021, if you are supposed to clear prelims of 2021, your grip on the concepts of economy is going to sail you through. Because in every year paper, in every year prelims question paper, you will see two regions to be very, very simple. Right? If you talk about, say, this 2020, S&T and polity were simple in 2020. Now if you talk about 2021, economy and polity were simple. In 2019, environment and economy were simple. So two sections are going to be such that at least some people will qualify this exam, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to reap on those two topics or those two subjects. Those people who made silly mistakes in your economy or those people who made silly mistakes in polity, it is very certain that they would not have qualified 2021 prelims. It is very certain because there everybody is going to play their game in those two regions only, because others are tough for everybody. Now those who have made number of corrects more with respect to your polity or economy, they are going to cross the cutoff, right? Economy, major concepts we will see. Another region where we will emphasize with respect to economy is your international economics. Now this year international economics are going to be, or it is going to be important because one is the proportion of reserves with RBI have crossed $600 billion mark. Now that is an historical rise with respect to your RBI reserves. So the questions regarding your RBI reserves with respect to your sterilization activity, it is going to be very, very important, right? And you will also see its impact vis-a-vis on exchange rate. Its impact vis-a-vis on exchange rate. Now any exchange rate will have three factors which are impacting it. One is the domestic price, the second one is the international price, the third one is the kind of sanctions which are being imposed either by the domestic market or the international market. Once you are able to decipher these three aspects, I think the variation with respect to your exchange rate is very, very simple to understand. Now once you understand this exchange rate, I think it is very easy for you to understand what is meant by managed exchange rate, what is meant by floating exchange rate, yes, and what is meant by sterilization activity of RBI. Is this clear? Right? Then the other aspects of economy is sectors. Sectors. Now when you talk about sectors, now generally there are three kinds of questions that are asked with respect to your sectors. The first question or first kind is factual base. Factual base. Now this factual base can be with respect to the GVA contribution. It can be with respect to GVA contribution, 1. 2, it can be with respect to the extent of FDI received by these sectors. Suppose if you talk about service sector is supposed to be the highest receiver of FDI, roughly around 70%. And among the service sector also you have your telecom sector, you have your IT sector, you have your banking sector. All these three sectors are top three sectors which are receiving most of the FDI in service sectors. So this can be the second type of question. The third type of question with respect to growth rates. With respect to growth rates. Right? Then the second rubric of this particular sectoral based question is with respect to trade. For example, a question in 2020. Question in 2020, it was a specific question with respect to South Asian region trade. Now that South Asian region trade, you will see that Bangladesh and Nepal are supposed to be one of the major trading countries with India. So one question can be on trade. It can be such that arrange them in the increasing order or arrange them in the decreasing order type of question. That is second rubric. The third rubric is analysis. Now what do you mean by analysis? Say, in the recent past there has been a rise in the fuel prices. The impact of fuel prices are seen on the following, which of the following sectors? So that is a kind of analysis question. Now in this analysis kind of question, what is happening is, you are going to use those concepts. You are going to use those concepts which we had discussed. Now these concepts with respect to your inflation, the concepts with respect to your growth rate, the concepts with respect to your contributions to your GVA. Now if you have to decipher the contribution or the concept of inflation, if you are able to understand what is aggregate supply and what is aggregate demand, your business of inflation is done. Because your aggregate demand is going to be driven only by one formula, C plus G plus I plus X. Yes? If you are able to remember this aggregate demand formula, and I think your inflation business is done. Because if any factor is going to increase, for example, your consumption of the individual, for example, the government expenditure, for example, your investment or your exports. If any factor is going to increase, your aggregate demand is going to increase. When your aggregate demand is going to increase, automatically what happens? The curve is going to shift. The curve is going to shift upwards. When the curve is shifting upwards, automatically the price is higher. Your P2 is greater than P1. That is nothing but inflation. A general rise in prices, inflation. Now once you are able to understand inflation, automatically you will be able to see how this inflation is going to impact your demand, how this inflation is going to impact your production. Because what happens is, when you have an inflationary condition or when you have a rise in the price, automatically the extent of production is going to reduce. Because the amount or the extent of supply of inputs is going to reduce. For same 100 rupees, you are going to get only 20 steel rods if the inflation is higher. In the similar manner, what happens to the demand? Demand is automatically going to reduce. Is this clear? So with this, once you understand the inflationary concept, once you understand this aggregate demand concept, automatically you will be able to understand how your sector is being impacted. It might be your agriculture sector, it might be your industry, or it might be your service. The simple way of solving your sectoral questions is look at various inputs of that particular sector. We'll discuss. For example, for agriculture, if there is any impact on rise in price of fuel, automatically a fertilizer price is going to increase. Yes? When your fertilizer price is increasing, what happens to the production level, or what happens to the extent of usage? Extent of usage is going to reduce. When the extent of usage of your fertilizers are going to reduce, what happens to your production level? What happens to your yield level is automatically going to reduce. Now when the yield of that particular farm or of that particular farmer is reducing, what happens to his income level? Reduce. Now it can be such that UPSC can ask you any of these stages. So once we are able to identify what are the inputs for each sector, I think the business with respect to the questions on analysis with respect to sectors are easy. It is straightforward. Because what happens is here most of the times we miss out some link here. We might think that how fuel prices, if fuel prices are increasing, how is agriculture sector being impacted? We might miss out that linkage that if fuel prices are increasing, the fertilizer prices are also going to rise. Or the other linkage is if fuel prices are increasing, what happens to the concept of mechanization of agriculture? The extent of usage of your tractors are going to reduce because automatically the usage of tractors is going to be costly. Now when the usage of tractors is costly, what happens to your ploughing season? What happens to the fertility of the soil? What happens to the yield? Right? So that is the reason why I told that once we are able to identify these inputs for each sector, solving these questions are very, very easy. Is this clear? Right? Okay, I think that's all with respect to your economy. It can be either concept, it can be either your international economics, it can be either sectoral based. And in all of these only you will have your factual base being incorporated. Right? This year Finance Commission is important. Finance Commission is important because your 15th Finance Commission has given its full plan apart from your TOR, right, terms of reference, right? Okay, next, ecology and S&T will club together. Ecology and S&T will club together. Now one question which is asked very, very frequently is concept based. For example, in 2020 question paper, there was a question called social cost. In 2016 question paper, there was a question called what do you understand by carbon credit? Right? Now we come across these terminologies very often, but it's only that we miss out on that concept. Right? Now in 2015 there was a question on something called as ECADs. What do you understand by the term ECAD? And in 2017 there was a question on phreatophytes. Now please remember, terminology based question with respect to any subject. One is either you would have learnt it somewhere, right? If you have not learnt it somewhere, the second option you have with respect to solving any terminology question is break it. Break it. Etymology. Phreato means, it basically means deep soils. Right? So that plant which has a long root system. That is simple. Because deep soils, long root system. Or which exist or which penetrate to the deeper layers of your soil horizons. This is another aspect. So one way of solving is your breaking. See, Anupriya, I think cooperatives they have asked enough. Because in 2020 also there was a question on cooperatives, in 2021 also there was a question on cooperatives. That was the reason why I skipped cooperatives this year. Right? No doubt cooperatives and Varghese Kuren are very, very closely related. But I think they have better aspects to be asked vis-a-vis Varghese Kuren. Right? Okay. One is concept. The second is factual. Factual. Now when you talk about factual base, now let me split into two subjects differently. Factual base. Now when you talk about ecology, the factual base is majorly your current affairs. For example, your national parks or your endangered list, IUCN red list, or your wetlands. This year, please mark your wetlands. Now I think from past 3 years this has been a pending question. Every year they are adding dozen and dozen of wetlands into Ramsar convention, but it's been a pending question. Right, in 2020 also it was expected, 2021 it was expected, but it is pending. So please be watchful of this particular question. Your wetland, your Ramsar convention, your Montrex record, right, and the geographical location of all of your wetlands, right. This is one aspect with respect to factual base, and another factual base, your ISFR any day, right, ISFR. And apart from that, this year mangroves are going to be important again, because there is some initiative called as Mangroves for Future. Yes, now this Mangroves for Future is going to complete 15 years by 2021. So this year mangroves is important. Now what do you mean by mangroves being important? The aspects that which we are going to see as part of mangroves. One, the vegetation type. Because when you look at the vegetation of mangroves as such, it has certain special characteristics. For example, pneumatophores, succulent reefs, viviparity, right? All these are certain aspects or certain special characteristics of your mangrove, one aspect. The second aspect is with respect to its distribution. Its distribution. For example, if you look at mangroves, it can be such that arrange the following in the area of occupancy with respect to states. Your West Bengal stands first, second is your Gujarat, third is Andaman and Nicobar, fourth is AP. Now this is with respect to the area, right? So that aspect is also important. The third aspect is application. We'll see all this, don't worry. Now whatever I am telling are going to be discussed in next 40 days. I am just briefing you with the plan so that you don't stop me at some tea point or tiffin point, right? Not only that, it's that you will have a clear picture of what we are going to see. That's important, so that if you want to read something upfront and come, you can do that also, right? So mangroves, right? This is with respect to your ecology. Now when you talk about factual base with respect to your SNT, again one aspect is your current affairs. Now majorly the factual base that is related to your SNT from two sectors. One, space, the other one is defense. One is space, the other one is defense. Now these two are the areas where it can be or it will be factual in nature. Now gone are those days where UPSC will ask you what is the difference between geostationary and geosynchronous satellites. No, that is gone. I think if you are in the era of 2014, 2015, you could have expected such questions, but not anymore. It is going to be factual, right? And with respect to your defense system, your integrated guided missile, right? The mnemonic is what? Patna, right? Mnemonic is Patna. Prithvi, Agni, Trishul, Nag, Akash, right? So your integrated guided missile system can be one factual base and other missile systems. For example, this year in UPSC Mains 2021, they had asked a question on S400, a 10 marker, a standalone 10 marker on S400, which was very, very weird, right? That's a prelims question but came in means. So such missile systems will shortlist. It's not that we'll read all the missile systems possible, but we'll shortlist. The other important area as part of factual base is your military engagements. That is with respect to the exercises. The military exercises, right? Okay, we'll see some, I think around 10 are important this year as part of your military exercises that are centered around your Quad countries, right? We'll discuss those. Okay. This is with respect to the factual based questions. And other factual based questions with respect to SNT, it can be pure science as part of your your biology, or as part of your chemistry, or as part of your physics. It can be pure factual question, right? The third type of question which generally appears is application. Now again, application, let me divide into ecology and SNT. Now when you look at the application aspect of ecology or environment, the one question is basically they will extend your concepts. Right? For example, a question on BOD. For example, a question on fly ash. Right? For example, a question on emissions. Now, one easy way of solving any question on emissions, because in 2018 there was a question on emissions, in 2019 there was a question on emissions, in 2020 there was a question on emissions, in 2021 there was a question on emissions. Right? They'll give which of the following are emitted from such a particular reaction. Now, one simplest way of solving emission question is identify whether it is organic or inorganic. Now, what is the basis for you to classify whether it is an inorganic substance or an organic substance? Is just remember, wherever you find carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen, that is organic. And rest other elements apart from your carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen are inorganic. When you are burning or when an inorganic substance is in the reaction, please remember you cannot have an organic substance being emitted. Simple funda. When an organic substance is being subjected to a particular reaction, you cannot have an inorganic substance being emitted. If a particular inorganic substance is being emitted from an organic reaction, that means it is part of impurities. Remember these three lines, don't worry, I'll repeat them when we are discussing. You can apply to PYQs, and at least I think out of last 4 questions, I think you can get 3 correct. This year's was little difficult. In 2021, it was a difficult question that was asked with respect to emissions. But apart from that, I think this funda will work. When I am dealing with organic, my emission is only organic. When I am dealing with inorganic, my emission is only inorganic. Simple funda. And organic substances are those which have CHNO. Right? So these are some application questions with respect to your environment. Now when it comes to SNT, majorly it is technology based. Now when you talk about majorly it being technology based, it is majorly your frontier technology. Now what do you mean by your frontier technology? Your artificial intelligence, your Internet of Things, virtual reality, augmented reality, right? Then 5G, All these are part of your frontier technologies. In 2019 there was a question on old technology, right? Then in 2020 there was a question on artificial intelligence. So these frontier technologies and its application are extremely important. Now one simple funda of answering these technology based questions is, for example, in last year in 2020, if I am not wrong, they had asked a question on application of artificial intelligence. They had given 5 statements and one of them was with respect to electrical lines, right? Most of us have marked all of the 5 options and came out, but UPSC key, it was only 1, 2, 3. Now here you need to remember that the application which is given in your options need to be sensible enough. You need to remember, although it is a frontier technology, it cannot make a girl a boy or a boy a girl. Please remember this. Something impossible cannot be done, although it is frontier technology in nature. What we do generally, your YouTube elimination technique says, when it is SNT, mark all of the above and come. That's what they do. That's what they say. Right? If there are 5 options, mark all of them because everything will be correct. That is the trend. But UPSC paper setter started watching them from last year. I think from last year all of the above funda with respect to your SNT questions have wiped away. Right? This year also the question on pressure cooker, right? And the question on copper slab, people were telling all of the above, but there were some exceptions. Right? In fact, the similar question of artificial intelligence last year. Right? And this year with respect to technology, we will emphasize more on biotech. We will emphasize more on biotech because biotechnology policy or biotechnology strategy has been given, right? We also have Biodiversity Act being amended. So this year biotechnology is going to be important. We'll see what all can be done with biotechnology, one aspect application. We'll see the technology side with respect to your DNA fingerprinting technologies, right? And we'll see the applications of DNA fingerprinting and recombinant DNA technologies. These 2 aspects we'll see with respect to biotechnology, right? Then other applications, it can be your general science. It can be general science. For example, this year the question on speed of light, you all remember? Yes? Now one simple funda you need to remember, just think like an 8th standard or a 9th standard guy. Don't think like an UPSC aspirant, because once you think like an UPSC aspirant for general science questions, you will think, "Arey dal mein kuch kala hai, there is something black here." Or UPSC is twisting the question. Right? UPSC is, it cannot ask such a simple question, it is going to give some twist there. No. This year that light question was very, very similar to that. People means they have overdone with respect to the concepts of light and they have marked it wrong and they have come out. Right? And I think from past 2 years or 3 years, it's a trend that UPSC is asking on such simple questions or such simple concepts. Right? This year, as part of anticipation, right, we'll see the principles of sound majorly. Right? We'll see the principles of sound majorly. Because this is one simple funda which is pending. Sound, a question on general science question sound has been asked way back in 2014. So it is a pending concept. We'll see the speed of sound, how will it vary with respect to your temperature, how will it vary with respect to your pressure, how will it vary with respect to the kind of medium, right? These are the three variable parameters that are present with respect to the movement of sound, right? If you are able to understand the sound waves and the movement of sound waves and the variation, it's very easy for you to understand in geography something called as shadow zones. You all remember? You all know shadow zones? Yes? With respect to your earthquake waves? Yes? What is the order of earthquake waves? P waves, S waves, surface waves, in surface waves. So the mnemonic is PSLR. P, S, love and Rayleigh waves. Yes. So this is the order of emergence with respect to your earthquake waves. And once you are able to understand these principles of sound and the variation of speed of sound, it's very easy for you to understand the shadow zones. Because the shadow zones are basically devised on the basis of variation of movement of sound vis-a-vis the medium. Is that clear? Right? So this is majorly with respect to your ecology and SNT, right? Now there are certain miscellaneous topics. Now one, as part of miscellaneous topics, one is international organizations. It's not that I think some institute gives you a 40-page notes on international organizations. You sit and by heart its headquarters, its body, where it is present. No. Right? Because now I told you, for anything you study for next 80 days, please remember a factor called ROI, return on investment. If you are putting 10 hours of study, that's what simple funda I told you, you need to reap at least 2 marks. At least 2 marks, because next 80 days have to be very, very tight. What do I mean by tight? At least 10 hours of study has to be there in your next 80 days. Because this year it is going to be a very, very golden opportunity. I think roughly around 1011 seats. I think from past 4 years we have been writing for around 700 seats. Right? In 2016 I think that was the last time where we had seen a figure of 900. Then in 2017, 800, 2019 again 800, 2018 700. In 2021 we had written for 690 posts. So this year it's a golden opportunity. That means roughly around 15,000 people will be writing your mains examination. Right? So 15,000 is a pretty decent number. Right? It was, at least it is better than 9,000 people writing. Yes, 6,000 people additional. So if you keep your next 80 days very, very tight, I think it is not at all difficult. Because the strategic aspect of this particular exam we will deal in the class. Right? I think if you all remember my open session, I told you, with knowledge base you can solve only 30 questions, my dear. The next 60 questions which you are going to pull up is only on the Jugaad techniques. Right? Is only on elimination techniques, is only on the etymology, is only on your gut feeling, is only on your subconscious level of knowledge. And for next 40 days what we are going to do, knowledge part, that is the reason why I asked you initially that are you done with your basic books. Because once you are done with your basic books, I think the knowledge base for these 30 questions is ready. From that 30 questions to 90 questions, we are going to work out in our 40 days. Now after these 40 days, don't complain, sir did not teach whole of geography, sir did not teach whole of history. No. I am not going to teach whole of history, I am going to only give you exam specific points, that's all. If it is Harsha era, what are the things that you are supposed to remember? That is my business. Because if I teach, again, whole of Harsha era will go for 3-4 days, half of your history time is done. We will not do that. It is going to be your revision notes. Whatever we are going to discuss in the class is going to be revision notes. That is point number 1. Point number 2, don't expect any printed material, right? Try for a running note. Okay, wherever it is required, I will dictate, but most of the cases it is going to be your running notes. I think most of you are used to your PDF culture. No? At least with me, my sessions, mostly you will not have any PDFs. It is only your running notes, right? Now coming back to this miscellaneous, one is your international organizations. This is one. The second thing with respect to your miscellaneous as such is sports, because 2021 it was the surprise element. I think I got section C. I think that's set C. Now in set C, out of first 11 questions, 3 questions are sports, right? Now that takes a lot of your morale to stick to the temperament in the exam, because it's been a while that UPSC asked any question on sports. Now it's not that you sit and read all your sports magazines, Sports Star, no, right? What we will do for sports is, see, last year I felt UPSC was very sensible with respect to asking sports questions. One, in the context of Olympics, right? India winning its gold after a long time, that is one. Second, with respect to the test championship for the first time, right? But about that tennis wala question, I think that was a little weird, right? But let's identify some 5 to 6 topics and stick to this. We'll do this miscellaneous section somewhere in the May 1st week, so that I think by then UPSC question paper would have been ready, and whatever important aspects in sports we'll figure out. Some 5 to 6 topics we'll see. That is going to be only a factual dose, right? Maybe for this you can expect a PDF, right, for sports questions. Okay. Some stats based questions. Now what do you mean by stats based questions is like, it gets very factual, right? Now majorly the stats based questions, there are some jugaad techniques again, right? Because one presumption is that UPSC always gives a number wrong in the question paper. That is the general presumption, that if any numeral appears in UPSC prelims question paper, it is generally wrong. It's a disclaimer that 90% of the times it is wrong. For example, how many of you all remember in 2020 there was a question on ocean mean temperature, OMT? Ocean mean temperature, I think people were very, I mean, it was a new concept that was asked that year, and there was a numeral given. I think around 27 degrees or 24 degrees, something like that. Now at least I had solved with that presumption, that generally numbers are wrong, generally. But anyway, as part of your geography, I said resources. In resources, we are going to majorly deal with numbers. The proportion of your groundwater, the proportion of your surface water, the proportion of your fresh water, right? Then we'll see what is the extent of extraction, okay? And with respect to your land resources, out of these land resources, basically the land distribution, okay? And what is the proportion of your deserts, what is the proportion of your forest, what is the proportion of your wetlands? We'll see all this factual base. Now this factual base, the reason for me to give you this factual base, it has a two-way utility process, in the sense, one, you can answer that stat based question. The second is that you can straightforward use that fact base in your mains examination, be it your GS1 or GS3, right? In a similar manner, we'll do it even for your economy. For economy, we'll have a 2-page stats notes on your agriculture, right? Because in 2020, when UPSC shifted for, increasing the proportion of number of questions on agriculture, most of the people came up a special course on agriculture. They started doing their agriculture sciences, right? Which is not needed. Because in agriculture as a topic also, you have again two-way distribution. One is either it is conceptual. For example, your agriculture density, your physiological density, right? Your crop density, or the other application aspect is the forms of agriculture, right? For example, last year there was a question on permaculture, right? And a question on hydroponics and aquaponics is pending, right? There is a slight difference between what is hydroponics and what is aquaponics. We'll see that, right? And there are newer forms of agriculture like Vedic farming, right? Like organic farming, like ZBNF. Now these are alternative systems of farming. Now this becomes very, very important, which we'll discuss as part of your economy. The second type of agriculture based question is stats. Stats, right? We'll do that. Karan will do that. Okay. Right? Now these are your miscellaneous sections majorly, right? And I think international relations and governance as a part will be clubbed. I think they are providing you with your schemes classes also, if I am not wrong. I think Vishnu sir told me that they will be giving you schemes classes also. Yes, and some topics of international relations we will see. Now international relations again, it is either factual or conceptual. In concepts, we will see the conceptual aspect, right? I think your current affair classes will cover your factual aspect, right? For example, there is something called as salami slicing. Now if that term called salami slicing appears, you should not wonder. That's a concept, right? Your neighborhood first policy, that's a conceptual understanding. Your look east, act east, look west, right? Your Gujarat doctrine and your doctrines of this year, I somewhere feel that nuclear energy is going to be very, very important. This year nuclear energy is going to be very, very important. Now it was expected in civil services mains examination, but they had asked in Indian Forest Service mains, right, as part of the GK paper. They had asked a question on, I think they had asked 2 questions on nuclear energy. Now whenever we are going to see that nuclear energy aspect, one part of nuclear energy is concepts, right? This we'll see as part of your SNT. As concepts, fission, fusion, right? Your ITER, the criticality of nuclear reactor. What do you basically mean by criticality of nuclear reactor? That's a concept, right? We'll also see what is meant by conversion ratio in nuclear reactor. That is, especially we'll use it in something called as FBRs, fast breeder reactors. Conversion ratio or conversion factor. That is one aspect. The second aspect is we'll talk about applications. The third aspect that we'll deal in nuclear energy is the doctrine or the policy of India. We have something called as common minimum deterrence. This is one. We have NFP, no first use policy. We also are strong advocates of non-proliferation. And your NSG, nuclear supplier group. NSG. And when you find this nuclear energy as a concept or as a topic, I think from past 6 years, 3 years they had asked a question. From past 6 years, I think 3 years they have asked a question. In 2020 there was a question. In 2019 there was a question. In 2017 there was a question. So this topic as such is going to be very, very important. Right? So this is going to be the expanse or spread of your next 40 days. Right? Any doubts? Anything you feel that it is missed out? Anything should be included? Survey and budget. See, I will not deal them survey and budget as a special class. The heads that I have given, concepts, right? The factual base, I'll club in that only. Whatever concepts that are discussed in this year's survey and last year's survey, because last year's survey there were some concepts called as cobweb phenomena. I think cobweb phenomena, you all know, cobweb phenomena with respect to the pricing of agriculture products. We'll discuss such concepts from last year's survey and this year's survey, right? On the factual base from this year's survey. I will not specify it as economic survey, but I will mix it up under these three heads because this is easy for me to tackle the questions. Whatever divisions I have made, it is question specific because these are the heads where you find UPSC is questioning. Right? Anything else? Acha, NSE. Okay, we'll see. There anyway, we have primary markets and secondary markets to be discussed. And most of us generally will have confusion with respect to your equity and debt markets. You will be confused with respect to certificate of deposits, right? Your commercial deposits. We'll discuss there. We'll discuss. Your Nifty, all this we'll discuss there. That is, I think, 1 hour session. Because we'll see whatever we are going to deal in concepts also, that is going to be a flowchart approach. So that you will not have paragraphs to read. It's only that you are going to skim through that particular flowchart and you are going to remember. Right? Anything else? I think it's a different class. Just give me a second. Karan will do MCQs with respect to PYQ. Okay? Veda Praneeth, both budget and survey, you need to, but important aspects will be covered by me. Okay? Right? Indices and reports, my dear. Yeah, I think I forgot as part of your miscellaneous. Now you need to remember, I'll give you some 3 cheat codes for that. Right? For indices and reports. Because it is humanly impossible for you to remember. If there is a word called global, it is generally WEF. Generally. Okay? We'll see. Like 90% this hits. 90% of the time this hits. If you find a word called global in your index. But we'll see something like that. Now again, after examination, don't come and round me up somewhere. Sir, you told global. That's why I'm giving a disclaimer clause there. Right? If it is out of your knowledge base radar, the only way to increase your hitting rate is like this. Because I think again the math of number of questions, I think it's very clear. If you are not attempting between 85 to 90, you are already out of the game. Take it for granted. This was not the case till 2016. Because till 2016, you had an element of something called as certainty in the paper. In the sense, if you mark it and come out, you know that it is correct. But from 2019 onwards, you mark it and come out, even the institutes which are preparing the key will not know whether it is correct or not. That factor, we have discussed something called as randomness factor in our open session. Like, roughly 10 to 15 marks will vary from your answer keys. When you have such a bracket of randomness, the only way of coming across that is 85 to 90 questions must be an attempt. Because out of, if you say 90 questions, you attempt 30 wrong. Say you are attempting 30 wrong, how many are right? 60, 120, 100. But say you are attempting only 78 and say I am very accurate on it. It's very likely that at least 20 questions are going to go wrong. Because the paper is such. Paper is such. Because what happens is when you look at the paper, when it is very, very random, the temperament itself makes you make 3 silly mistakes at least. So 3 plus 17, 20, 58, 20 or 21 say, it's easy for calculations, 14, 57, 114. Maybe you might be saved provided you make only 21 mistakes. If something goes above it, then it's a problem. Here already the error bracket is large, 30. Is that clear? Okay, anything else? Anything else you think that we have missed out?
Can we expect a question on there will be Ukraine's goods planes in Korea?
See, one thing you need to remember, that the factual base is generally less. Right? The factual base is generally less. But whereas if you talk about your state PCS, such questions can be expected. State PCS will majorly be on facts, on a one-liner question. But here the factual base is generally less, it is more or less a conceptual oriented understanding. Right? Because what happens is, now it's very clear again, with the kind of information that is available in the market, if UPSC goes for a factual question, the cutoff will be like 130, 140. Take it for granted. Because every piece of information is available in a short form. You have in a compiled format. Now all of the aspirants are by hatting that. When you by hat that, and if UPSC falls in that radar only, cutoff will be 130, 140. Just like that happened in 2016, where cutoff was 117. This was for civil services. For forest services, it was 128 that year. Is this clear? Right? Now let me talk about PYQs. PYQs. See, one disclaimer with my sessions is that they will be hammering in nature, right? Because we have very, very less time. The 2.5 hours are going to be split into 2 parts. One is (1 hour 40 minutes) for subject discussion, right? Now this subject discussion for 1 hour 40 minutes, which is very, very less time. So it will be very intense, right? Second, this 45 minutes are for your PYQs. I will say this is little more relaxing, but you need to be more attentive. The reason for me to keep the session at 2 to 4:30 is that most of us sleep during this time. Yes, I think I could find that even in my class today. Some people were feeling my session to be lullaby. Don't worry, you will get used to it, right? So that this 2.5 hours is going to be very, very productive. Now after this class, you go back to your room, and if you feel like sleeping also, you will not sleep. That's very sure. Because this is going to be intense. That's what I told. Keep your next 80 days very, very tight. Very, very tight. And trust me, if you are keeping your next 80 days very, very tight with respect to your 10 hours of study every day, nobody is going to stop you. Because all the strategy aspect, all the mental aspect, or all the preparedness with respect to the context of the exam is done in your class. That is the reason why I have spread these sessions for 40 days. The reason is, we will slowly indoctrinate the status and the mentality of UPSC into you. So that once if the question paper is very, very twisted also, you can do some jugaad and come out. That is the only purpose. I am not here to teach you some knowledge. It is not new. Trust me. It's only that I can debug some concepts here and there. The only purpose is infuse that temperament of that exam. You can even do that by seeing your YouTube videos for one night. But what happens is, when you see that YouTube videos for one night and next day if you want to apply those techniques, trust me, not even one will be applied. That demands a kind of indoctrination, that demands a kind of imbibing with respect to that techniques. Right? Now, let's see how we are going to do these PYQs. Now, these PYQs, for polity, it is going to be very important. So, what we will do is, before we start any concept, for next 2 days, we will focus only on PYQs. Because once we finish your PYQs, 60% of the concepts are clear. That's the purpose of it, right? And you will find which areas are very important, which areas are not important. You cannot sit and read whole of your Lakshmikant just the night before, trust me. Because the last week of your examination, there are 3 things which are to be revised. One is your modern India, your spectrum. The second one is your polity Lakshmikant. The third one is your 12th standard macroeconomics textbook of economy, 12th standard economy. These 3 are supposed to be revised in the last week. Now, for you to sit and revise all these 3 things in the last week, it is not possible. So, the important aspects only can be revised thoroughly. Okay. So, for polity it is important. For history it is important. For ecology and SNT it is important. For second degree, I will say it is your economy and your geography. So, for these 3 subjects, the first 2 days of your session will be PYQs, in and out, right? Your PYQs also maybe, I think for history they are divided into ancient, medieval and modern. We will do that accordingly, right? Now, I think in the schedule, Sundays are declared as holidays. It might happen that some Sundays will be having classes, right? In case if we have some exigency on the later dates, okay, that is the reason why we have given Sundays as a buffer day, so that if any class is missed, or if something happens, or if some exigency, or if I have to attend my interview, then we will cover it up sometime before, right? I think it's flexible, right? Now, coming to PYQ solving, one is, we'll look at the concept. And when we look at the concept, we'll see in what all formats it is asked, in what all formats it is asked, in what all formats it can be asked, right? Now, if you read your previous year question analysis from some textbook, they will stop at this stage, right? They will straightforward give you the question, they will give you the solution, but they will not, or you will not be able to decipher in what all formats it can be asked, right? Because see, you need to remember, at the end of the day, some human examiner is only going to set the paper. Now, that human examiner or that fellow will also have a psyche that to keep the paper something special. UPSC will ensure that that year prelims paper is discussed for the next 1 year. It tries to make it such something very special like that. Now, if he has to, or he or she has to make it very special, the region available to him is very, very limited. Because already 11 years of questions have been asked. So the region where he is going to operate is only this. Simple. Don't you think once we are able to understand this psyche in what all formats it can be asked, don't you think answering the question will be very simple? Now say out of your 100 questions, even if 10 questions appear in this region, trust me, you're going to have a lot of moral boost. Right? So the first aspect which we are going to do in PYQs is in which all formats it can be asked further. That is one. Then we will see the option analysis. Now some factual question, he gives 4 options. Now next year he picks up the question from that same option. Next year he picks up the question from another option. So here what happens is, when we are able to cover in and out the options, here for every question you will have roughly 3 concepts covered. Simple. Yes or no? Now this is not only in my class. If you are doing it at your home, you are supposed to do it in this format. Doing previous year questions does not mean straightforward reading their analysis. The thing you need to do is in what all formats it can be asked, and you need to analyze each option. The third thing is elimination techniques. Elimination techniques. Now I think once you come across some of the elimination techniques with respect to PYQs, you will think that array, this exam is very easy. Because UPSC makes it. It basically checks whether you understand the psyche of the exam or not. One simple example I told you already with respect to exam elimination technique is, whatever numerals that are generally given are wrong. It's a presumption. Generally wrong. In 90% of the questions this works. I think one more elimination technique which you people will be very familiar is extreme words. Extreme words, always, only, none. Yes, extreme words. Forever. Right? Here always these extreme words are generally wrong. Now it is not only for UPSC examination. Just remember, or just try to debug this. What happens is, no phenomena in this universe can be extreme in nature. Monsoon always appears between June and August. Is that so? No. No. UPSC prelims is always difficult. No, not necessarily. So no phenomena on this universe or in this universe can be extreme. So simple funda. Now when a question or an examiner is giving some statement which is extreme, either this end or that end, certainly it is wrong. Because it can never be extreme. The third elimination technique is something called as moderation. Like just the converse of extreme. Now extreme is, I said, these two ends. Now moderation is something in middle. Mostly, sometimes, at times, right? For few times. So here what is happening is, the examiner himself or herself is confessing that this occurs in certain periodic manner. So that is what is meant by moderation. If something is falling in this region, it is always correct. Just remember this. And if something is falling in this region, it is always wrong. Now you need to remember that there is irony in my statement also. UPSC can twist it. It is generally wrong, not always wrong. It is generally wrong. One more technique is similar words. I am just introducing all the elimination techniques or some of them, so that when we are doing your PYQs, it becomes acquainted. Now similar words. Now what do you mean by similar words? Is that in 4 options, in 2 of the options we'll have similar sounding words. For example, if you take a question in 2018, with respect to diamond merchant, there was a question on which of the following were the diamond merchants during Delhi Sultanates or during Mughals. That was the question. They have given 4 travelers' names, and in that 2 travelers had a starting of Jeen. So the answer must have laid in these 2 options. You will understand this more clear when we are seeing your PYQs. This is what is meant by similar words. Right? This works again. Now this may not help you to get or arrive at the answer, but this will allow you to arrive at least 50%. 50-50 probability. Is this clear? Right? Or if any statement is having a place in it, it is generally wrong. It is generally wrong. Now you might be thinking, sir, how can you say this? At least out of last 11 years, at least 9 years, one or the other techniques have worked. 2018 was an exception, but apart from 2018, rest other years, they worked very well. Now these techniques are to be used when you are stuck at 50-50. Most of the aspirants will give the exam and come out and say, we were able to eliminate 2 options, but we are stuck at 2 options. Are ma luck baaledu. We had a very bad luck that whatever we marked, that was the wrong answer, but the other one was the correct answer. In that situations, these techniques are going to help. One is when you are at 50-50 condition. 2, if you do not know anything. If that particular question is completely out of the radar of your knowledge, then these techniques are going to work. Because now I told you with your knowledge base you can solve only 30 questions. The rest 60 questions, because we have kept a target of 85 to 90, the rest 60 questions we will use one or the other technique. And you will understand these techniques very well when we are solving your PYQs. So when you are solving your PYQs, we will see 2-way approach in PYQs. One is by knowledge, the other one by techniques. Imagine you are not able to recollect that particular concept at that particular point of time. Considering the pressure in the examination hall, how will we use these techniques? Now don't say inky pinky ponky there and this is a technique. No. Father has a donkey, you need to buy one then. Right? Okay. So that is not a technique. Now these techniques are purely devised on the basis of trend of the examination. Now UPSC has all the liberty to change the trend. Right? It's only that this is a safety mechanism, this is a crisis management mechanism which we are devising upfront and going into the examination hall. Is this clear? Because I need to give all these disclaimers, because once the paper is done, sir, you told similar sounding words, but the answer is something else. Right? Okay. Anything else you want to ask? Tomorrow we are having class? Or holy celebrations? No? Tomorrow we are having class. Right? Tomorrow and day after we will do the PYQs of polity. Because I think first subject is polity as per the schedule. Polity, geography, history, ecology and economy at the last, right? The reason for keeping economy at the last is we can cover whatever new concepts that are arriving in your current affairs. That is the only funda, right? So 2 days we'll try to finish most of your PYQs. If something is left with respect to your PYQs, then we'll do it on a daily basis, right? Anything else you want to ask? For today we'll stop. Yeah, somebody asked me some Jugaad techniques in CSAT, right? I told you I'll tell you some Jugaad techniques with respect to reading comprehension. I'll do that, right? Maybe someday, if I think when we are doing history, because generally history is very, very intense, right? It is very taxing on us. Now, during history, maybe we'll pick up 3 or 4 years CSAT question papers and we'll devise or we'll tell you some Jugaad techniques or how to solve your reading comprehension. Okay, is that clear, Karan? Sources confirmation. Now, with respect to sources confirmation, see, I think it's clear most of the time. For polity, it is Lakshmikant. For political thought, it is NCERT, right? For history, medieval and ancient, it is NCERT. NCERT, please remember, it is R.S. Sharma and Satish Chandra, right? R.S. Sharma is not the Oxford publication, but pure NCERT publication. That light brown color one is R.S. Sharma and Satish Chandra is that green color one. Then with modern, it is Spectrum. Then with economy, I think. With economy, it is one is macroeconomics textbook 12th standard, and other aspects for prelims, whatever we are doing in the class, that is more than sufficient, right? Because if it is for mains, I think I would have suggested Sanjeev Verma or some other book, right? But for prelims, conceptual understanding, you will just need this 12th standard macroeconomics textbook, and other aspects, whatever we are doing in the class, right? Then geography, 11th and 12th standard NCERT, right? Please do read your human geography also, right? In that human geography, I think they did not update the stats. I think they have given 2001 census. So please stick to the concepts of human geography. There they talk about different types of densities, population pyramids, right? Different types of ports, different types of minerals, mineral distribution, all this, have a look for NCERT. Then ecology and SNT. Ecology and SNT, most of you follow Shankar. Yes, but the return on investment with respect to Shankar, it is less. Okay, I'll try to provide a fact sheet on ecology, because whatever terms like ECADs, all these ecophenes, all these are compiled in one place. I'll try to provide that fact sheet for ecology, right? Other concepts we'll discuss. Then for SNT and ecology, try to focus more on current affairs, because that is where the questioning is. The concept aspect we'll discuss, the current affairs, you do the part, and whatever is related, we'll try to figure it out in the class. Is that clear, Karan? Anything else you want to ask? Any doubts? This speed is fine, or should I slow down a little bit? No, I think people are sleeping at this speed. If I slow down, I'll hear background effect of snoring also, right? Anything else you want me to add? Yes? Yeah, I'll tell. See, I cannot tell techniques just like that. When I am solving question, and if I am able to substantiate it, it is more relevant and it is more imbibing, right? If I see, for example, if I talked about similar words, now you were not able to relate. Now when I am doing a question and when I tell you that it is similar words, then you can there and then you can note it down. Okay. keep following your schedule. Keep following your schedule. Leave that 2.5 hours to me. But once we finish this 2.5 hours, when you go back, try to revise it before your dinner time. That's very, very important. Don't procrastinate things, right? For next 80 days, that is what is meant by keeping it tight. Don't procrastinate things. For 2 to 4:30, you're going to spend here. Once you go back, before dinner, revise it. Revise it and do all the PYQs what we have done in the class. It should be such that if I tell you 2011 question number 79, you should be able to say, sir, that is polity, it is a question on liberty, blah, 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 blah. That helps, my dear, that helps. That actually helps, right? People will say UPSC is all about analytical, being that what? Fung Suk Wangduk of 3 idiots, it's a mixture. What is the other person's name who recites a poem? Silencer, no. What's his name? No. In your 3 idiots, you need to have that mixture of that fellow and Amir Khan. Okay, that's important for this exam, right? What's his name? Chatur, right? By hatting part should be like Chatur. Understanding part should be like Fungzub Amir Khan, right? It's not like how does engine start, not like that. Okay, anything else you want to ask? World history. See, world history we don't have as part of your prelims. Now, world history majorly it is part of your mapping. We'll restrict it to mapping. Now, if UPSC makes a surprise and asks 1 or 2 questions, you have the leverage of 10 questions to skip. Play safe. You can play safe, skip those questions if it is very difficult, right? Anything else? Online people, anything else? Best strategy for current affairs. Okay. See, when you talk about current affairs, now there are 2 ways. One is the category where people have been reading their newspapers every day. The second category is those who do not read newspapers. Now, those people who are reading newspapers, well and good, if you would have made notes out of it. If you did not make notes of it, stick to some compilation. Now, those who have not read newspaper, the business is little difficult for you people. You need to stick to 2 compilation sources. Because now here what is happening is, these days some compilations are such that they skip some factual base, right? Now, so in order to cover that safety basis, if you are not reading newspaper, take 2 compilation sources, right? You can take yearly compilation, no doubt, PT 365, whatever, focus, whatever it is, you can take yearly compilation, but ensure that you make a 10-page notes out of that compilation. Just as an example, where most of the crowd follows, say, if you are reading your PT 365, say for polity. Now, in polity, what did I say? I said, polity is completely on the basis of catches. UPSC is going to catch you somewhere by twisting one fact or by twisting one organization. Make a 10-page notes of those catches from that particular PT 365. Simple. Now, for economy, make a list of concepts, because anyway we will be covering all those concepts here. Make a list of concepts. Stats you don't need to, because anyway I will give you fact sheet, 2-page fact sheet, which is sufficient for your examination, right? And other organization schemes and other bodies you refer. So whenever you are reading a compilation, ensure that you make a 10-page notes, right? I think In your colleges and all, you are very famous for your micro Xeroxes. Yes? I think the Xerox shop near you will be giving you micro Xeroxes. Something in that format. Something in that format. If you take PT365, it divides into different sections. For every section, make 2-page notes. On an average, 10-page notes for your PT365. You don't need to write everything in this. Remember, whenever you are studying, most of you mark everything. You need to remember, you need to mark only those things which are difficult to remember. Because anyway, other things you are going to remember. That's very obvious. Whatever you are marking or whatever you are going to revise are those things which are difficult to remember. That's all. That is a simple funda. Is that clear? Karan is asking, is it necessary to solve coaching mocks every daily 2 hours or alternate dates? Is it fine? Now I think with respect to your mock papers, I think we have seen 50 as the number, 50 question papers, right? Plus PYQs. The reason for solving these 50 question papers is to practice all the techniques what you have learned. Point number 1. Point number 2 is to revise. That's all. Is to revise. Now he is asking about whether to solve it daily or not. Now take it, you have 80 days. If you are solving 50 question papers from today on, you will have 50 days done every day. That means the last 30 days are going to be your revision days. So logically it should be such that you should be solving one question paper every day if you have not done it before. That's it. Thank you.